Welcome back to the Wargamer and another miniature painting tutorial. This time I'll be showing you how to apply the effect of damaged paintwork to your miniatures using regular acrylic paints and a little graphite. So let's get started. When it comes to adding weathering to your miniature, it's a task that should be left until last. After all, real world examples will have their paintwork and markings completed before ever being exposed to the elements and the damage that they incur. The miniature I'll be using in this video is an SD KFC 250/9 Neu or New from Rubicon models, and I've painted to this stage using some life colour paints from their World War II German tank range. You may have noticed that I've also applied some decals using the same techniques featured in one of my previous videos. So with the paintwork and decals completed, we can begin with the paint damage. The first step involves creating a sponge tool. This can be easily achieved by taking some packing sponge or foam, trimming it to slightly larger than a pea size, and gently plucking at the surface to create some raised strands. This sponge will allow us to quickly and easily achieve an ununiform arrangement of scratches on our surfaces. Next, we need to choose the area that we want the scratches and paint chips to occur on. This choice will involve imagining where this kind of damage is most likely to occur. When applying chipping to vehicles, the likely locations are edges that could scrape against walls and other debris, doors and hatches that are frequently opened, as well as routes that the crew may take when getting in and out of the vehicle. Reference photos are particularly useful for this. Once you've chosen an area, you may wish to apply some masking tape to prevent any overspill occurring onto the other surfaces. For example, I want to focus damage to the edge of the rear door and not the frame itself, so I've applied a small piece of masking tape to protect the paintwork beneath it. With our sponge and tape applied, next we need to choose a colour of paint. I personally like to use darker colours for this task, as this helps to create the illusion of depth in the paintwork. Dark greys, reds and browns work particularly well for this, as they can also represent the panel surface primer showing through beneath the later layers of paint. Personally, I will be opting for the dark reddish brown to represent red oxide primer coat showing through beneath the Dunkelgelb base colour. With your paint chosen, dip your sponge into it and remove the excess off onto a piece of paper or tissue until only a small amount remains on the sponge. Then, lightly damp your sponge over the surface you wish to add weathering to. Apply only a small amount at a time, and remember that less is often more. Also take into account that some areas, such as the bottom half of the vehicle, are more likely to have denser areas of larger chips, as opposed to the small and sparser paint damage on areas higher up the vehicle's chassis. Chipping and scratches can also be applied with a regular brush too, and often the thinner the brush, the better the result. So once you've acquired a suitably narrow-tipped brush, you will next want to choose and thin down some paint. In addition to paint chips and scratches revealing the primer beneath, lighter damage may only reveal the base coat beneath a camouflage pattern. If your vehicle has a camouflage pattern over its base coat, like my half-track here, then you'll need to grab a hold of your base colour paint once again. In my case, it'll be Dunkelgelb. To help the scratches stand out against darker camouflage colours, I would recommend mixing in a very small amount of white paint to very subtly make the paint lighter. You will then want to thin down your paint just a little bit so that your paint flows smoothly from the brush. The amount of water you use will depend on the paint, but keep adding a small amount and testing the paint on a spare piece of paper until you're happy with how the paint leaves the bristles. With your thin brush and thin paint, you can then apply some small, roughly horizontal scratches in the areas of camouflage. Try not to apply the paint too heavily, as once again, less can often be more. You can also use this brush and paint mixture to randomly apply small flecks to the edges of the panels like you did earlier with the sponge. Grouping these around the areas of sponge flecks will also help to give texture to these areas. Remember, try not to be too uniform with your application, as we want to maintain that random distribution. The final step involves using graphite, the source of which is up to you. I like to use some graphite sticks, but a pencil will work well too. Try to opt for a softer graphite, around B2 or higher will work well for this. We'll be using a finger to apply the graphite, so rub your pencil or graphite stick onto the tip of your finger. Then rub your finger over some of the edges where the most wear and tear would occur. This will leave a thin, slightly shiny line along the edge, which creates the effect that the paint has been worn down to bare steel. For harder to reach areas, you could use a similar masking technique to the one we used earlier, or you could instead use your pencil or graphite to apply it directly to the edges of the miniature. And here we have the completed miniature that has been fully assembled and varnished with a matte varnish. This is particularly important as the graphite may rub away if you're using this for gaming purposes. Now, whilst I've applied this technique to a World War II vehicle, the steps used in this video could easily be applied to other miniatures as well. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I've used the STKFZ250/9 from Rubicon models, and the paints used are from Life Color. You'll find links to those in the description below. Along with these, you can find a full list of all the other materials that I've used in this tutorial in the description below, along with any other equipment I've used to create this video, such as my everlasting wet palette. If you enjoyed the shorter, more focused type video, do let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out my Patreon page if you would like to support these videos from as little as $1 a month. If you have any questions or would just like to chat with others who enjoy my channel, I've set up a Discord server which you can find a link to in the description below. So the only thing left to say is, thanks for watching and goodbye.